Very nice. Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here. Hello. That was fun.
That's beautiful.
What
Absolutely
a lovely noise.
Yeah.
Right. Rather a grand title to this week's show: How to choose the right delay pedal for you.
Big fingers.
Yeah, we've done how to choose the right overdrive pedal for you before. There's a lot to think about, because I think it's fair to say, before we started doing this show, Dan, I really didn't understand delay pedals at all.
Really?
No.
Wow.
And it's only in doing the show over the years that we've been doing it that I kind of have been able to compartmentalize and break things down a little bit and understand what might be appropriate and what might not be appropriate for particular usage. But you have a much longer history in delays.
Well, it's an effect that I've always connected with. And some of my favourite music uses a lot of it, and in not always the most orthodox ways you might think. You know, it's not always an edge-sounding delay. So just, we thought it would be a great idea to go through some uses and sounds, and to help you sort of narrow down, the field of what you're looking for, because there is so many delays out there. Yeah,
it's really confusing. We've got some on the floor down there, which we'll pick up as we go through the show. You can see them sort of off to the other side of the pedal cam there. It's going to be, to try and make it understandable, we're going to talk about three main categories of what you need to think about if you're choosing a delay pedal. Number one, really simply, what do you want the delay to do?
Yes,
because I think even that can be a really confusing question for people. Number two, what kind of sound do you want?
Yep.
Do you want it dark? Do you want it bright? Do you want it affected? And number three, what about practicality and functional stuff?
Yes.
And the reason we're asking that question is, ultimately, do you need this? 85,000 delays and 1 million parameters? Or do you need this? One delay and one parameter.
There you go.
Two, maybe. So yeah, that's it. Maybe we should start with, what is delay, Dan?
Okay. So with delay, like a good example is the earliest forms of delay, such as tape delay. What would happen is your sound gets recorded, and then it is fed back onto the signal after a period of time. So you get this delayed effect, this repeated effect, this echo that sort of washes over the sound. Tape machines, drum machines, some of the earliest forms of echo. And it was such an amazing sound, especially for guitars. Of course you hear it on vocals and other instruments, but the guitar just sort of you know, as soon as we heard it, so those slap back echoes and that sort of thing, you know, it was a sound that we would always hear on guitars from that point on.
Let's do a really super quick basic demonstration of that.
Okay.
So if we set up a clean digital delay here.
Yep.
Standard, right?
Yes.
In the Boss DD200.
Yep.
We'll set up, we'll talk about, so what happens? It's your sound repeated.
Yeah.
And there's two things you can do. Well, there are three things you can do with that. But the two main things are, how many times do you hear the sound repeated, repeats, and how long is the delay for?
Yeah.
So, for example, Dan, if you wouldn't mind. Very short, one repeat. Longer, one repeat.
Great. Yeah.
Longer, more repeats. Really long. So apologies if that's a bit oversimplistic, but that's the basics of delay, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just
how long is the sound delayed for, and how many times do you hear it back? That's where it begins.
Of course, that you have the level of the delay after that, but that's the main things. Yep, gets the sound, length of time of delay.
So let's why don't we put some brackets on that then, and put that into context. So coming back to the question at the top of the show, what do you want the delay to do?
Yeah,
and we've come up with kind of a few examples of what you might want the delay to do. Firstly, to have it always on as a texture in your playing. Secondly, to use it as a specific switch on when you need it effect, like for a solo, for example.
Yep.
And thirdly, which is related, is to add a specific tonality to your sound. And an example of that would be the tape machine, which we'll come to. So let's put some brackets on what we were just talking about in terms of delay time and feedback, and think about where a short delay would be useful.
Sure.
For an always on kind of sound.
Okay.
So what are we talking about with that?
So if we're doing slapback, for example, a country thing, you hear it's such a prevalent sound in country music. So for that sort of a sound, we might have, let's say, the carbon copy.
Cool.
Yep. So
this is the MXR carbon copy. It's a phenomenally popular analog delay. We'll come on to talk about that in a bit. But yeah, just really simple. Regen is the repeats that we talked about earlier. Delay is the delay time that we talked about. And the mix is how much delay you hear compared to how much of your original sound you hear.
Okay, so.
Classic rock and roll.
Yeah.
And you can use that in anything from chicken picking to, like Travis picking type stuff. such an iconic sound.
Yeah.
But people use it in rock as well, don't they? People will use an even shorter delay than that.
Yeah. So if like for a solo boost, certainly a shorter delay can be magic. So if you just skank it again for us. So without it.
Yeah.
It's just killer.
Really killer. We'll come on to talk about solos in a minute. So that's, you know, if you're playing any sort of roots kind of music, even like a short delay for blues and stuff, particularly rock and roll, particularly country, a short delay with one repeat or thereabouts.
Yes.
If that's the sound you're looking for.
Yeah, and in that context, it can be a really, really simple delay.
And that's, because you're not really hearing the repeat for very long. It doesn't really matter what that repeat is at that point, does it? Helps if it's a little bit dark like that. But maybe we'll come on to talk about tonality in a bit.
Yeah, sure.
So there you go. That's a short delay with a short repeat as an always-on sound. Secondly, what if you go up from there in terms of the time?
Yep.
So maybe you're still only talking about one repeat, but there's blues players who do this. Matt Schofield does this. He always has a short, slightly longer than that delay. On Robin Ford, for anyone who's into Robin Ford, that kind of tasteful melodic blues playing, he always tends to have a fairly short single repeat delay on.
Sure.
And so before we were talking between maybe 100 and 150 milliseconds, 80 to 120.
Yeah.
So down there around the 100 mark. Now we're going to go up to between 200 and 300.
Yeah. Okay.
Try that.
Yeah. Yep. Great.
Should we stick with the carbon copy or should we go to something else?
Let's go to something else.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the ARP87. So this is a digital delay with lots of shaping options. Okay.
So maybe what would be good here is to talk about delay level as well.
Yes.
About how loud it is in comparison to the core sound.
Okay.
Right. Really filling out that sound.
Yeah.
Would you mind just taking it down a bit more dirt on there? Would you mind taking it down to almost imperceptible?
Sure.
With the repeat level.
Yep.
And then bringing it up so that it's crazy crashing everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Becomes really tough to play when the repeat level is up so high. Then you're into using it as a specific effect, which we'll come on to in a bit.
But that it's almost like a reverb when you have it down like really low. It just adds a little bit of body.
Fattens it.
Yeah.
Makes things feel a bit easier under the fingers.
Yeah. And that's a sort of effect that you can have on all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not time specific in the sense that
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about it matching up to the tempo of the song or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's an effect that just sort of sits underneath.
It's really important to say that, isn't it? Everything we've spoken about so far, about that kind of always on texturing effect.
Yeah.
The delay time is important in terms of it being in a sort of range, i.e. a slapback short, a medium single repeat, and then what we're going to talk about in a second, a longer. But you don't have to worry specifically about tying it to the tempo of the song.
That's because that works in a specific sound. That if you're doing rhythmical type delays that work for the tune, but as far as creating a texture is concerned, these sort of sit outside that tempo thing.
It's interesting what you said about it being almost a bit like reverb, because if you hear anybody play a loud amp in a big room, you're going to be getting some of that natural reverb, and you might even be getting some very obvious delay, and it just gives you that. For me, those sorts of delays are in a way kind of like being in a room.
Sure.
A little bit like that, which isn't reverb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about short slapbacks. We talked about medium single repeats, what we would call medium single repeats for a bit of ambience. I've been stumbling across quite a few rock players recently,
Right.
who will go 800 plus
Yeah.
milliseconds, that is, and quite a long delay. Mm-hmm. Can we have a listen to that?
Yeah, sure.
Again, as an always-on kind of texture.
Sure. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll bring that up in the timeline.
Yep.
And we'll get the. There we go. Let's do 1,000 milliseconds.
Yep.
So we can go up from there.
You have a play, geezer.
Okay.
It's harder to deal with.
Yeah.
Because you're essentially playing over your repeats. Actually, it can help if you've got a lot of reverb on as well.
Sure.
Like a lot of the guys who are into the sort of progressive and ambient genres, guys like Rabia Massad, will use huge amounts of delay and reverb just to really fill it all out. But
it's really interesting hearing that in the mix. So that's it's a producer's trick as well.
Yeah.
To put a long delay on the guitar on a track, and it's really interesting what it does to it, as to just where it sits.
Yeah. Super quiet, not really obvious, but it just sort of fills out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's great. But so the thing about the longer delay times, you are looking at a digital delay.
Yes.
To be able to do that.
Yeah. So that, I guess that, what do you want it to do? If you want short and medium delays, then most normal analog delay pedals usually go up to at least 350 or 300. Mm-hmm. And then most of the modern ones will go to 600, and some of the modern ones will go to 1,000.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. So there's three examples of an always-on kind of texture that you might want to use it for. Mm-hmm. We touched on the idea of using it for a solo or a specific part in a song. All of those things we've just talked about are true there as well. We did the kind of really short delay for a little solo poke out. And of course, if you're playing the big sustained note rock solo, then a great big long delay can be a truly wonderful thing.
Yeah. The other thing is that you can use both of them. So if you, so let's get some El Grunjo going.
Yeah.
And I'll set up a really short delay here.
Yeah.
And a long delay with a timeline. Okay.
Pretty harsh.
Yeah, no, but it's great. If you know, so you can, you know, you can mix them.
Mix the two.
Yeah, yeah.
We haven't spoken about tap tempo yet, so we're talking about milliseconds and the timing of the delay. You can do that in two ways. You can either set it on the top of the pedal there, or a lot of modern delay pedals have tap tempo. So if your song is Daniel, play a song.
Nice. So cool.
A demonstration of, so I tapped quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I tapped eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, to get the delay working. Now we're not going to go into this in this video, but then you can, instead of just straight quarter or eighth notes, you can tap divisions of that, which is called subdivisions. Probably a bit too much for this video, but that's where you get your classic edge style dotted eighth from.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of the digital delays, or even the very clever tap tempo analog delays, have the ability to choose the subdivision you want as you tap.
As this one does.
Yes, indeed, doody. Yes, so you can choose the subdivision here. Actually,
let's do it.
Yeah, let's
as soon
do
as
it.
we said we weren't going to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
Whenever we do this, we always get it wrong. So let's see if we can break that chain.
Okay.
You'll never break the chain.
So let's go. Here you go.
Yep.
So have strung out in this,
and you're going to make me do it.
I'll go through.
We actually did it first time.
Nailed it.
So the way what we were doing there, please, hopefully the copyright police won't pick up on that. There's a very famous song by a very famous band, very famous Irish band. And so Dan set it to quarter notes and tapped in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then simply by setting it to dotted eighths, it worked out the delay time, made it, and then we had that.
Yeah. So that repeat basically is playing off what you're playing. So if that's the sort of thing you're looking for, having a pedal that gives you the ability to tap tempo and then set the subdivisions it just saves a lot of hassle trying to work out what your subdivision is and trying to tap that as the song's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we worked out that it is actually 421 milliseconds.
There you go.
So if you know that, then you don't need subdivisions. You can just set your delay pedal to do 421 milliseconds and try and play in time with it. But having the extra functionality, as you said,
sure,
really helps.
So the other thing, so we did that with a digital delay, but there's some really clever analog delays. So for example, the delay llama also has the ability to do that. So if you do the same thing and we stick this on, and I'm going to put it in.
Twice in a row would be unprecedented, Daniel.
All right, here we go.
Yep. Play the same thing?
Same thing.
Straight there.
Nailed it.
Because it's got subdivisions.
Yeah, so it just makes that really easy.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think that's probably the end of section 1. What do you want the delay to do? Do you want a short delay time? Do you want a medium delay time? Do you want a long delay time in terms of sound? And secondly, do you want some ability to be able to set that delay time on the fly or using subdivisions?
Yes.
It all seems remarkably obvious, but if you don't know this stuff, I didn't know this stuff when we first met, so...
Yeah, and and once you know this stuff, it is going to point you in certain directions of pedals, and it will ease the confusion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings us on to section 2. You know what you want a delay to do in terms of the basic function of it. What do you want it to sound like?
Yeah.
That's the next big question, because this is where we get into talking about different delay pedal types. Brief history of delay, Dan? Really brief history of delay?
Okay. Go to the Grand Canyon, say, hey! And then that's the first one. Yeah. All right?
The cavemen.
The caveman delay.
We're doing echoes before.
So you've got, I think, so the first one's your drum delay. And then shortly after that, the tape delay. Then we have the analog bucket brigade devices, chips, and then digital delay. But there are a number of different ways that we've been created in these delay textures over the years, and they each have a different sound.
When you come to buy a delay pedal, chances are there's going to be one of those 4 sounds, isn't it?
Yep.
Drum, which is the least popular, and we'll put oil can in with drums as well, which is a slightly different thing, but probably the least popular, gaining resurgence just recently.
Yeah.
With things like Strymon Volante and Catlin Bread.
Belle Epoch Deluxe. The Echorec.
Tape. Been popular forever.
Absolutely.
So this, next to Dan, is a tape machine that's got spinning tape in it. And many of these pedals on the board and on the floor there will replicate that sound of spinning tape.
Yeah.
Analog delay, as you said, bucket brigade devices.
So Memory Man's a great example.
There you go. That one even says it on the top there. Look, analog delay.
Yep.
And then digital delay, the great revolution in the, late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah.
Something like that, early 80s maybe. Great revolution in really super clean sounding delay. So the chances are when you're choosing your delay, you may want one or all of those sounds. Shall we listen to some of those sounds?
Yeah. So let's start with the tape.
Nice.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So I'm going to get you to play.
Oh, goody.
Now, a really interesting thing about tape with a machine like this, it's not just the tape that's giving you the sound. The tape is part of the process, but a massive part of the sound is the preamp that goes along with this.
Great example of that is Jimmy Page with his Echoplex tape machines in front of his Marshall. Had a very specific preamp sound.
Actually, I'll tell you what we can do. I'm going to turn the delay level right down, because this actually has like similar to an Echoplex preamp in it. Okay, so you'll be able to hear it. So there's no delay on this. So we're just going to hear the preamp.
Okay.
Quickly.
Subtle, but definitely there.
Yeah. So, and a lot of players, when they heard that, they would actually set their Echoplexes with delay off.
Yeah.
Because they love the sound of that so much. And if I turn this up even more, just so you can hear the sort of boost it can do.
That is, I'm smiling because, delay pedal as boost.
Yes.
And before we move on, it's important to say that if you get to a modern recreation of that, in this, the Belle Epoch Deluxe, for example, they will often have an extra preamp circuit in there to give you that sound.
Yeah,
so it's not just about the delay.
When you're talking about the sound of tape delays, the preamp section is really important. So pedals like the Belle Epoch Deluxe that do it really well, and
J-Rocket have just come out with a really awesome little
preamp thing,
which uses a delay anyway. Blah blah
so,
blah.
So that is part of the sound. Now,
Yeah.
when you hear, I'm going to bring the tape now. We'll bring it back down to unity, and we'll bring the tape sound up.
Yeah. Such an evocative sound.
Yeah, it's magic.
So the delays are kind of clean sounding. You've got that little bit of overdrive in there, and then the way they filter off the sound of the repeats as they go off.
So let's just have a listen to that. As you play a chord, and we'll have a listen to the way that the tape. So what's really interesting is that there's quite a lot of fidelity in a well-maintained tape machine. You see, on some of the older pedals, you might have a tape mode, which was just a filter that took off a load of top end. In actual fact, there's quite a lot of detail in a good sounding tape machine. What you also get is a natural movement of the motor that gives it a sort of a natural modulation. But yeah, so if that sound is something that really connects with you, as it does with me, so I've had this on my rig ever since it came out, because sonically, I haven't found anything that quite does what this does.
It.
Yeah.
You'll get so in a DD200, for example, there will be a recreation of that created digitally.
Sure.
And what Dan's saying is, it's great. If you want like 10 different delays, we'll come on to that. That's a really good way to do it. But if all you want is that tape sound,
yes,
and that's the only thing you want, then
and
you're either all in for a tape machine,
or
you come back to a specifically tape geared machine like the Belle Epoch Deluxe.
So let's have a listen to the Belle Epoch Deluxe. That's a really good example.
Yeah. So, delay time. I can't actually read the blooming things.
So good, so good.
If you're wondering what I'm fiddling around with on the floor, we've got the delay level hooked up to an expression pedal. So if you, with the expression pedal off, there's no delay. And with the expression pedal on, there's delay. And it controls the level of the repeats. So
keep playing. So keep playing
I
that.
could just play that all day. Interesting. We're diving up an alley here, but you know that which is essentially supposed to sound exactly like that. The fidelity in that is
It's crazy.
considerable, isn't it? Considerably more.
Yeah. Now this is brand new.
Yeah.
So it, you know, it's really, really clean, but you can hear though that the preamp in that is doing a very similar job.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're thinking about, you know, tape, the Belle Epoch Deluxe is an amazing option, but thinking about, you know, that preamp as part of the sound, you know.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay, a quick foray into drum delay, and drum delay being the Echorec-style. We talked about that earlier. Tape does this as well. You can have, instead of just having one repeat, you can have multiple heads. Right?
Yeah, that's right. So you've got those record heads, and then you've got playback heads, and selecting a different combination of the playback heads, because obviously you've got different spaces between those playback heads, and you know, you can, if you have, you know, the playback heads 1, 3, and 4 on, you have a different spaced, you know, delay repeats.
Let's demo it. So we're going to switch to a drum style delay here, which in the Echorec tradition. And I'll change the number of heads and you can hear how that sounds.
Okay, yep.
Go for it, Dan. Just give us a bop. And
It's so great.
Sorry, I was messing around with the delay time there. So obviously on a short delay time, it ends up sounding more like a reverb.
Sure. Yeah.
And on a long delay time, it just ends up sounding like multiple delays banging off each other.
Yeah.
It's a really, really cool sound. If you want to know more about that, either watch our previous shows on Echorec type delays or Google Echorec and watch a few demos. But
and so some other specific pedals that do the Echorec thing. So we have the Echorec from Kettlebread, which is a great sounding Echorec thing. And also we have the Echotopia from Crazy Tube Circuits.
never going to stand on there.
There you go.
Yeah. There are many.
There's loads.
The Boonar, Jazz Echorec type things.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, the Boonar. That's great.
Yeah.
So like you said, it has had a resurgence of late.
Echo Sex Baby,
Yep.
Strymon Volante,
Oh yes,
which is great. So yeah.
there's a bunch.
So all of that awesome delay history, and we haven't even got into the most common delay pedals currently available. So we come forward from tape, and the next thing to happen after tape is
the invention of the bucket brigade device. The invention of this chip meant that we could miniaturize things.
Go from that to this,
Exactly.
more or less.
Yeah, so it's a really good example. So let's have a listen to this and just have a listen to the repeats, and you'll hear what happens. So what's the first thing you hear with that?
It's dark.
It's dark. Exactly.
It goes off.
Yeah. Now, if I reduce that delay time, have listened to the repeats.
Not as noticeably dark.
Yeah. But then with the delay time...
Sorry, I'm using a really noisy P90 pickup, and I'm trying to get rid of the hum as we do it. But
yeah, so traditionally, the analog delays have got there's a sound about them that's awesome, but they are dark. They don't have the same fidelity as a good maintained tape machine.
Gave them a sound, didn't it? I mean, if you think about what's the most famous analog delay, the Electro-Harmonix,
the Memory Man.
Just in that technology not being able to deliver the high frequency, and then they added modulation to the repeats, it just became
there we go.
A whole thing, spawned a whole new load of sounds.
Yep. So there are hundreds and hundreds of analog delay pedals. All have a different sound depending on the way that they did a preamp and things inside, but traditionally they have that warm thing about them.
That's what defines analog delay for me.
Yeah.
Dark repeats, and then quite often, so you've got the dark repeats.
Beautiful.
The addition of modulation into the repeats. And when anyone says analog, not all analog delays have modulation in the repeats, but to me, that's where analog delay has its magic.
Sure. Now, so the really interesting thing about that sound, I mean, you hear all the fidelity in that in the tape. It's beautiful. But the great thing about a really good sounding analog delay is that those repeats don't really fight the original sound. Yeah. So if we've got a solo tone going. Give me some schwungage there for a second. So there was a lot of delay there, but it never took away from your initial notes.
Always underneath, isn't it?
Always sits underneath.
Yeah.
So, and it's such a fantastic sound. So whereas, other delays, they've got a real fidelity, like, for example, the Echorec and that sort of thing. The analog delay is a great texture thickening thing that doesn't get in the way
Yeah.
of what you're doing. Really fantastic.
And what we're talking about here, the difference between these delays is the sound of that delayed sound. It sounds really obvious to point it out, but if you come at it as a newbie and you think a delay is a delay is a delay, and you buy a clean sounding digital delay that just repeats exactly what you just played, there's so much more to it than that, as we've just discovered, because the way tape does it, the way the analog circuit does it, we'll come on to digital in a second, and the way drums do it really defines everything about the sound and makes it playable or not, which hopefully relates to the original question of the video, how to choose the right delay pedal for you.
Yeah.
Just understanding those basic differences.
Yeah. So if what you're using your delay for is, that thickening thing, but it's only ever there to, to add texture. It's never there as an effect, so to speak.
Yeah.
Analog delay is an awesome thing, but analog delay can also go from being very simple to being very clever, because we now have these new digital's got to such a point where we can actually digitally control our analog bucket brigade devices. So, for example, Dalai Lama, really good example of this. It has all those features. So if you give us a strungage on this, and we'll have a listen to the repeats.
This is the new Dalai Lama Extreme from Jam
Yes.
Pedals.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not as dark as the MXR. It's definitely cleaner, but you'll notice that we have this tap tempo. So it's an analog delay that gives us the ability to tap in that time, which, until recently...
Yeah, it was relatively rare, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There is Carbon Copy Deluxe that does that, and quite a few analog delays that have tap tempo now. But it is a really nice addition.
I think the first one that did it was the original Memory Lane from Diamond.
Right.
If that wasn't the first, that was certainly really, really early on. So that gives us the ability to have our analog delay sound and to tap the tempo. But then it also does a number of really interesting things. So with the Carbon Copy, we heard the modulation, which is basically modulating the time of the delay to give us that modulation. But then you can do, this new digitally controlled analog means that we can radically alter the sound of those repeats. So, for example, with the Dalai Lama, we can add vibrato onto the repeat.
Yeah.
If you just give us a swing out of that.
What are we doing now?
So now we're actually pitch shifting. So this is all done by altering the delay time, right? But you can radically alter the delay time. So, for example, if I have a delay and then I halve it, that delay speed, my sound will go up an octave. If I have a delay and I increase it if I double it, then my sound will drop down an octave. So they have some options in here that let you do that and pitch, sort of pick the intervals.
Yeah,
so
you can go by an octave or a fifth.
Yeah. So play a note for us. So some really clever use of manipulating those delay times to give, some radical sounds. Now that is, like I said, digitally controlled analog. Another really good example of that is the tonal recall from Chaseless Audio. Again, digitally controlled analog. Let's see, this Deluxe Memory Man also has tempo, digitally controlled analog, which is really clever. Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there. Also, the Syncope from Stone Deaf, really great digitally controlled analog delay. So if what you want is that analog sound, but you're looking to have some extra control over, you want to be able to do some more creative things with it, there's some really great options.
We've taken an evolutionary leapfrog there, haven't we? Because we've gone from the original analog delays, which were fairly didn't really have much on them. They didn't even have the modulation on them when they first came out. Things like the Ibanez AD9, was it? Was that what it was called?
Yes, the AD9.
And of course, we must mention the Boss DM2.
Yeah. There we go.
In original form, which was...
looks a bit like that.
This is the new Wazza version, but there was an older version. And these were the original analog delays.
Here's an original... this predates the 89. This is the AD80. It's an old 18 volt, much darker than the 89.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an original one from the very early 80s. Great sounding...
Simple analog delay.
Yeah,
and of course, before we leave analog delay, we should talk about oscillation.
Yeah, we should.
Where any decent analog delay will do it, where you turn the repeats and the effect mix up so that it oscillates back on itself. Such as this. Daniel, go for it.
So good.
Just keep
it's
doing
the sound of Radiohead.
Just keep doing it all day long. It's just the best. The second best thing about analog delays, apart from how cool they sound.
Yeah.
So as I said, we've made an evolutionary leapfrog there. What came along in between the original analog delays and all that digitally controlled functionality that Dan was just talking about was the basic digital delay.
Yes.
Which is was a revelation when it happened, because instead of a coloured sound coming out of your delay, instead of a character sound coming out of your delay, you just got exactly what you played in.
It's a really super clean digital representation.
I don't even know if this
sound.
does it, actually. We'll find out, I guess. Standard. Okay, go for it. Just straight in. So when something like to be fair, the early Boss digital delays like the DD2 and stuff like that did have a sound because
really did.
some of the other components that were in there. But just that pristine digital delay. As a point of opinion, my least favourite kind of delay, because it has no character.
Sure.
There is no preamp love.
Yes, exactly.
It's the kind of thing you might associate more with studio production than you would with... But I think it's relevant to this conversation, because I think a lot of people will go out and buy whatever the latest basic Boss digital delay pedal is, as brilliant as they are, stick it in delay mode and really struggle to play over it, because all you're getting is your sound banging back at you exactly the same as you played it.
If your sound has any attack...
Yeah,
it can be really, really
Let's
difficult.
demonstrate that a sec. So we'll put some overdrive on. Dan, play if you wouldn't mind just playing a bit of a... First of all, let's get the delay time set the same between the carbon copy and the DD200.
Okay.
So play the carbon copy for a sec, can you? Take the modulation off. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
More or less the same.
Yep.
Give me some solo-y type stuff with some overdrive using the carbon copy. Have you shreddies this morning, Dan?
Woohoo!
Just a really basic demonstration of clean, pristine delay and kind of cloaky, darker sounding delay. One of the reasons, to go back to the head of the show, the reason I turned away from delay fairly early was because I got my Boss DD, whatever it was, digital delay. And when I played it, it just did that. It just stomped over everything I was trying to play.
Sure.
And I didn't know that a delay pedal could do a different sound.
Right.
Didn't know that basic thing.
Sure.
And that basic sound might be more appropriate for different uses.
Yeah.
Of course, digital delay has its uses.
Yeah. So a really interesting thing with digital delay, if you want to set up a rhythmical pattern with your delay. So again, I mean, we use the dotted eighth thing just because it's simple. But what the digital delay will do is give me such a clean repeat that it sounds like two guitars playing off against each other.
Yeah.
So, for example, so if I'm going. So it gives you the sound of that delay.
And whole careers were born.
Exactly. There you go.
Albert Lee's a big user of that.
Yeah, right.
Particular dotted eighth trick with a really super clean delay.
What's that? I'm a country boy. There's a
Country Boy is the
country boy.
Yeah,
There's an amazing guitar solo,
yeah.
which is all that. Yeah, great.
Sounds like you're playing twice as many notes as you are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's a sound that really clean digital delay is really good for.
And it might be exactly what you need.
Yeah. It's a sound.
Okay, so we're getting there, and I think what we sort of strayed into there, we talked about what do you want the delay to do to begin with. We then, what kind of sound do you want? What do you want those repeats to do? And we talked about analog delays and tape delays and the way in which that the sound of the delayed signal is different from the original signal, and whether it sits in or whether it suits your music. And then you can go much further than that. You can start EQing them, so you lose all the bass, or you lose all the treble, and there are various delays that have that functionality in them. In terms of the tone modulation we talked about, which is a great part of classic delay sounds, particularly from the 70s and 80s. And really that tees into, if what you want your delay pedal for is a specific sound, i.e. to sound like the Edge, or to sound like Albert Lee, or to sound like Jimmy Page, I think we've probably covered that off. You know, if you want to sound like Jimmy Page, you're really looking at a tape
Sure.
echoplex type delay. If you want to sound like Albert Lee, you're looking for a clean sounding digital delay. If you want to sound like Andy Summers and The Edge, you're probably looking for an analog delay with modulation.
Sure.
So just that basic bit of information can really get you a long way down the line.
Yeah. Now, the other, as far as the other bit of sound that's worth commenting on is if what you're after is more experimental and creative, then there are a number of things, pedals that have some really fantastic capabilities with those repeats. Timeline is a really good example. So, for example, if we've got things like filter delays. And another really cool thing it has is the ability to put an effects pedal in the loop. I've got this wire probe in the loop, right? So if I just put on a standard digital delay, actually I'll turn this off so you can hear the delay first. Turn the wire probe on. Which is really cool.
It just hints at the possibilities.
Yeah.
What was happening there, the timeline internally was using digital signal processing to affect the sound of the repeats.
Yep.
And then you added an external device to do the same thing.
Yeah.
To affect the sound of the repeats.
Yep.
And again, apologies if that sounds too simplistic, but hopefully it explains exactly what's going on.
Yeah. So, ecosystem, an awesome, lots of really creative things. The Polymoon from Meris, an incredible sounding, creative tool. The Boss DD500 has a lot of similar capabilities.
Source audio. I mean, there are so many multi-featured, incredibly capable delays like that.
Yep.
Which I think probably takes us to the last point, Dan.
Sure.
We talked about what do you want it to do and what kind of sound do you want, and then probably the entry point for most people, which maybe isn't the ideal entry point, is what features do you want?
Yeah.
What's the practicality set that you need? Because the temptation is, right, to dive in and go, right, what I need is the most complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can do it all.
Yeah, you see the feature set on a delay and go, wow, I can do so much. I'm going to get that. When in actual fact, I've experienced that myself. I recorded an album with the Spirits, with the Timeline, and it had a few delay sounds in there that I couldn't get any other way, and I had that on my board for years. When we stopped doing that album, I realized actually the delay I was using was quite simple.
Yeah.
I didn't have to have a million options. And I went back to tape, and I had tape and the ARDX20. And now I'll be including this, which is a tape style sounding thing, the ability to have flange repeats on the trails. We've had this in a video before, but it also includes a looper in it. So, if
you want to watch that video, it was Pedal Jams a week or two ago. Yeah.
So, do you want a looper built into your delay pedal? Do you really need tap tempo?
Yeah.
Do you really love tape, but you not willing to lug around something like this?
Yeah.
So it's, identifying those things that are, really important to you as far as functionality is concerned and practicality.
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? So I think a majority of people probably want tap tempo.
Okay.
Because if you're not looking for a character delay in terms of an always-on sound and you want the repeats to be in time, tap tempo is really important to a lot of people.
Sure.
So that can be a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
Secondly, how many actual delay sounds do you want?
Yeah, that's the big one.
If you want a nice tape simulation and an analog delay, you're sitting right on the fence there of going, do I buy something like this, which can simulate both? The DD200 or the Timeline or any of those other fully featured multifunction delays, or do I just get a really nice tape echo simulator and a really nice analog delay and leave it at that if that's all I'm ever going to use? Because the danger is, and we're all different in this respect, some people are just very tech native and are really good at diving around menus and finding the sound. Personally speaking, option paralysis is something that will stop me playing the guitar faster than anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the tape delay setting in the Timeline, struggling.
Option paralysis is such an interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Because you can be wowed by a feature set.
Yeah.
But actually when it comes to understanding it and putting it to getting to a point you can actually make music with it.
Yeah.
If that is putting you off, if that becomes a road barrier to you actually making music, being creative with the thing, then that's really something to be aware of.
And I think that's why we've put it, because for a lot of people, that practicality, functionality, and feature set would be thing number one.
Yeah.
But for us, thing number one is why.
Yeah.
Why do you want a delay pedal?
Yep.
What do you want it to do, and what do you want it to sound like? Because your answer might be, I only need a carbon copy.
Yeah.
Because that's the sound I want, and I'm never going to use any other sound.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think it's important to reflect on that. Further functionality stuff, if you are going to use 20 different delay sounds, then clearly you need something that's programmable. You might want MIDI switching, if it can
all that stuff.
Chime in with your rig. If you're that far down the road, you probably don't need this video.
Sure.
I think something like this, the DD200 from Boss, hits so many nails squarely on the head.
Sure.
Because you've got a good range. Like if you're coming to delay for the first time, you've got a great range of basic delay sounds. You've got 4 presets and tap tempo, and it's really easy to understand.
Yeah. There's no hidden menus or anything like that. It's all it's all very simple.
You've got global control of things like if you want modulation, you can have more or less of it, and if you want tone brighter or darker, you can have more or less of it on any sound you dial in. That sort of global, really. Some of the more fully featured delays, won't have a tone option on one of the delays, but will have it on another. And yeah. So for me, if you're a delay newbie, something like this makes such a tremendous amount of sense.
Sure.
And then as you continue your journey from there, so for me personally, I like tape, and I like analog. Yeah. And I like drum.
Yep.
So I have those 3 options.
Sure. So another really interesting feature set was some of the analog delay pedals, such as the Delay Lama Extreme and the Echolution from Pigtronics, is that they do have the ability to have some presets in them.
Yeah.
So they're still, again with that, digitally controlled analog. If what you want, so for me, I want a nice, long, heavy modulated analog, and then I also want a slapback analog. Yeah. So those sounds I can create in that and just whiz through them.
Store in there as presets.
Yeah, and really, it makes that really easy. So, sometimes the ability to have 1,000 presets actually isn't really what you want.
No, unless you've got to program your whole set.
Sure.
And you have a different delay. So and if you are there, you're already a long way past this video. Hopefully what this video is if you look at the delay pedals on the market and you go, I am totally confused, I've got no idea where to start. Hopefully you can go, what do I want it to do? What do I want it to sound like? Makes the choice a bit easier.
Yeah.
Does it?
Definitely. I think it's fascinating. Delay stuff is always interesting, but when you see it like this and you see all the options and the sounds available and all that stuff, it is it's wondrous. So please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Also a massive thank you to our Patreons on Patreon. Thank you guys so much. Also, to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is...
Anderson's Music of Guildford in Surrey.
And our guys in Australia
would be Pedal Empire of Brisbane in Queensland.
Also, there are some links at the bottom in the description, which, if I think a lot of these pedals are available. If you decide to buy one and you purchase through one of the links, it helps us be able to continue to create these videos. Cheers, guys. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.